Hi, can I be heard? Sorry. Hi, Pam. Am I heard right now? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Hi, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to our online special lecture for today. I am Harbin Ang. I'm a lecturer at the Ateneo CSP program, Chinese Centers Program Department, and also at the UP Center for International Studies. This event is entitled Familiar Strangers, Ethnic Boundary Making, Unmaking by Korean Chinese in China. This event was organized by the UP Korea Research Center, by the UP Center for International Studies, and by the Ateneo Chinese Studies Program Department. So I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. She is Ruixin WEI, a PhD candidate in the Department of Korean Studies at Goethe University Frankfurt, Germany. Her PhD project explores the spatial, temporal, and emotional dimensions of ethnic identity among younger generation Korean Chinese, focusing on how their sense of belonging is shaped and expressed within transnational and translocal contexts. She has published articles and reviews in British Journal of Sociology of Education, Journal of Multiculture and Education, the Review of Korean Studies, and the European Journal of Korean Studies. Without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Ray Sinway.
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. How should I? Okay, it's on already. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Dr. On, for the kind introduction. I'm Rishing. Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Professor Peg Min for organizing this online event, and to Professor Kim Doe for kindly joining us as a discussant. My thanks go to these three institutions for all this opportunity to share my research. I'm pleased to see participants with backgrounds from Korean studies and Chinese studies here today. It's truly a pleasure to connect with you, even virtually. And I hope that what I'll be presenting today will spark some interesting discussions and insights. Thank you all for being here. With that, let's get started. Today, I'll be presenting my research titled Familiar Strangers, Ethnic Boundary Making, Unmaking by Korean Chinese in China. Before diving into the details of my research, let me first of all give you an overview of today's lecture. This lecture is organized into 5 sections. First, I'll discuss how ethnic minorities are represented in China, framing them as familiar strangers in the Chinese social landscape. This provides the necessary context for understanding the experiences of Korean Chinese. Second, I'll introduce the Korean Chinese community, briefly outlining their background and explaining why they serve as a relevant case for studying ethnic boundary making. I will then introduce Andrew Binner's theoretical framework, which provides the foundation for my analysis. Third, I will explain my research design, outlining how I collected my data sources and developed my analytical approach. Fourth, I will present my key findings structured into 3 main types of strategies: reinterpreting ethnic membership, asserting national belonging between foreign and family, changing one's position in the ethnic hierarchy. Finally, I will conclude by summarizing the key insights from the study and their broader implications. Let's now move on to the first section. Ethnic minorities as the familiar strangers in China. China is a multi-ethnic country with a population of 56 ethnic groups, including the Han Chinese majority and 55 ethnic minorities. As expressed in this well-known patriotic song called 爱我中华, Love My China, 56 stars, 56 flowers, brothers and sisters of the 56 ethnic groups belong to one family. Ethnic groups in China have long been portrayed as brothers and sisters of the Chinese nation. Although the 55 ethnic minorities account for only 8.89% of the total population, they are quite conspicuous in various occasions. The images of ethnic minorities wearing folkloric clothes, headdresses, and jewelry, singing and dancing frequently appear in national ceremonies, festivals, museum exhibitions, news media, and textbooks. And the state is highly involved in the identification and representation of ethnic minorities, shaping their image through official classification and national narratives. In the 1950s, the Chinese government initiated an ethnic group identification project called 民族识别. Experts were dispatched to the borderlands where most ethnic minorities resided to investigate and collect relevant information. The ethnic group identification project was essentially based on Joseph Stalin's nationality theory, which defined a nation as historically constituted, stable community of people formed on the basis of a common language, territory, economic life, and psychological makeup, and manifested in a common culture. In line with this view, specific attributions were ascribed to different ethnic groups through a top-down categorization method through China's official identification project. More than 400 ethnic groups claimed to be identified, and only 55 ethnic minorities were officially recognized by 1990. Ethnic minorities are entitled to preferential policies in areas such as family planning, education, and regional infrastructure support. While these policies were designed to promote social equality, they are often perceived as a top-down comfort privilege, which reinforces the perception of ethnic minorities as being at the bottom level of social development, thereby perpetuating a hierarchical nationhood. The effect of China's preferential policies is thus argued to be paradoxically both profound and shallow. Profound in the strategically legitimating Han culture as more advanced than ethnic minorities, and shallow in addressing surface level stability without resolving deeper issues of identity and integration. The state-led ethnic identification and association policies not only regulate the officially designated status of ethnic minorities, but also shape their representation in national narratives. Such an image showcases China's inter-ethnic solidarity and conveys state ideological messages. At the same time, it limits minority individuals to popular stereotype that ties to selected social cultural markers. They are often thought to be normally marginalized in a society features Han Chinese centrality and superiority. They are depicted as related to primitives, poverty, illiteracy, and superstitious in China's official media. They normally look colorful and exotic in cultural products and have incomplete and stereotypical images in textbooks. Overall, ethnic minorities are the others in the repeated national narratives to mold a multi-ethnic Chinese nation. It is noteworthy that without ethnotypic differences or traditional costumes, ethnic minorities remain largely unknown to the mainstream Chinese society and experience varying degrees of alienation in daily life. They are the familiar strangers in Chinese society, distinctive yet stereotypical, well-known yet esoteric. Since we'll frequently mention certain ethnonames in the following presentation, I will just briefly introduce some terminologies. Korean Chinese are the focus of today's lecture. In Korean, they pronounce as Choseonjo. In Mandarin Chinese, they are called Chaoxianzu. To maintain consistency, they are referred to as Korean Chinese throughout this presentation. Depending on the context, 民族 could be translated as meaning nationality or ethnic group. However, due to the territory and political sovereignty connotations of nationality, the term is often depoliticized as meaning an ethnic group in relation to social and cultural dimension of minority groups. If the term Chinese nation is used, it refers to 中华民族, the collective term for all ethnic groups in China. Thus, the concept of Chinese nation includes both Han Chinese and other ethnic minorities. With these terminologies clarified, let's now take a closer look at the key characteristics of Korean Chinese to understand why they serve as a pertinent case for studying ethnic boundary making. Among China's 55 ethnic minorities, Koreans rank the 15th most populous ethnic group in the nation. Korean Chinese is one of the officially recognized ethnic minority in China who can trace their migration history back to the mid-19th century when Koreans migrated from the Korean Peninsula and settled in the historically volatile region of Manchuria. On the one hand, they straddle two cultures from two homelands, their natal homeland in China and ancestral homeland in the Korean Peninsula. On the other hand, in many aspects, the images of Korean Chinese do not align with the stereotypical descriptions in the national narratives regarding ethnic minorities. Korean Chinese have a higher geographical mobility than Han majority and are more urbanized than the population of China as a whole. They were found to have highest average monthly earning among all ethnicities, including the Han. Among the minorities, they have an exception in terms of education attainment, even compared to Han Chinese. Arguably, Korean Chinese make a pertinent case to revoke the agency of ethnic minorities, highlighting them not merely as marginalized victims, but as active agents. The Korean Chinese case atomizes the broader dynamics of alienation, which are shaped not only through interactions with Han majority, but also through cross-border networks and transnational influences. And against this background, I raised two research questions. What social categories are at play in categorizing Korean Chinese in daily life in China, and how Korean Chinese embrace or reject this categorization through managing ethnic boundaries strategically. To address these research questions, I drew on Andreas Wiemer's theoretical framework on ethnic boundary making, Unmaking. His approach provides useful analytical tools to examine how social categories operate in everyday life and how individuals navigate and contest these categorizations. Let's now take a closer look at this framework and how it may apply to Korean Chinese case. Wiemer's theoretical framework draws inspiration from the intellectual genealogies that explore the concept of boundaries, looks into different options that actors can pursue to react to the existing boundaries. It's an agency-based comparative model of ethnic boundary making. The boundaries formed between actors vary in political salience, cultural significance, social closure, and historical stability, depending on the degree of power inequality between them and the extent to which consensus can be reached. Additionally, ethnicity is not taken for granted. It matters in certain societies, but not in the others. Depending on the characteristics of the social field an actor is situated in, such as its institutional environment, its position in the hierarchy of power, and its network of political alliances, they determine which strategy to adopt. Wiemer proposed 5 types of ethnic boundary making strategies: expansion, contraction, transvaluation, positional move, and blurring. By shifting boundaries, an actor may establish a new boundary to either expand or contract the range of people included. By modifying the meaning of boundaries, an actor can challenge the hierarchical order, change one's position in the hierarchy, or emphasize other social divisions instead of ethnicity. Since alienation experiences do not touch upon every ethnic minority to the same degree, previous studies have either emphasized the collective plight of ethnic minorities while overlooking the heterogeneity among different ethnic groups in China, or primarily focus on the specific minority populations such as the Uyghurs, Tibetans, Mongolian, and Hui communities, as well as highly volatile minority regions. The case of Korean Chinese aims to enrich understanding of individual minority experiences while offering a new perspectives on ethnic boundary making and unmaking. As a non-typical ethnic minority, Korean Chinese expand the space and possibility for boundary negotiation. Moreover, prior research on Korean Chinese has mainly focused on their return migration to Korea and their Koreanness, assuming that their Chineseness as given. However, Wimmer's theory highlights that ethnicity matters in some societies, but not in the others. The Korean Chinese case, situated across multiple societies, illustrate this fluidity, making it a strong case for analyzing contingency of boundary making and unmaking. Having established the theoretical framework, I will now turn to the research, move on to the research design, outlining the methods used for data collection and analysis. The study uses a mixed methods research design. Initially, in the first step, I conducted a focus group interview with 6 Korean Chinese youths in their mid-20s about the most frequently asked questions they received in China. I raised the question in the group chat and facilitated the ensuing discussion. Data is generated through the conversation that unfolds among them. From this focus group discussion, they eventually agreed that there are 4 representative most frequently asked questions, which are: the first one, are you Chaosianren, North Korean? Second, which team would you support if there were a football match between China and South Korea? Third, you must be able to watch Korean dramas without subtitles, right? Fourth, have you received bonus points in the college entrance examination? And these questions were coded to formulate answer options for the subsequent online survey in the next step. On the Chinese social media platform called Xiaohongshu, also known as Red Note, I first of all posed a single choice question. As a Korean Chinese in China, what is the question you're most frequently asked in daily life? In addition to cite the 4 questions concluded in the previous focus group interview as the multiple choices, an other option was also included, allowing respondents to provide additional elaborations in the free test comment section, which is the second part of this online survey. On the Chinese social media platform, while the participants took the single choice question remain completely anonymous, those who left comments may have profiles that can be tracked. Nonetheless, most users do not disclose complete personal information on their profiles, making demographic analysis for survey respondents unreliable. Participants are more likely to disclose stigmatizing or sensitive information in anonymous online surveys compared to non-anonymous ones. Xiaohongshu has 300 million monthly active users, among which over 78% of the users are aged between 18 to 34 and predominantly female. The lack of gender information may somehow reflect potential gender patterns. And to minimize the margin of sampling error, I extend the data collection period to include as many respondents as possible. The survey was broadcast with hashtags such as Korean Chinese, Yanbian, which is the Korean Autonomous Prefecture in China, ethnic minority to attract more potential participants. And now let's look into the results of online survey. By January 27th, 2025, a total of 2,118 respondents answered the survey, and 485 interactive comments were collected from the comment section. Among the 2,118 participants who answered the single choice question, the majority, 1,281 respondents, indicated that they were most frequently asked the question, you must be able to watch Korean drama without subtitles, right? And this was followed by 455 respondents who reported being asked the question, are you Chaosian North Korean? Another 174 participants choose the question, which team would you support if there were a football match between China and South Korea? While 140 participants noted that they were often asked the question, have you received bonus points in the college entrance examination? And 68 participants choose the other options. To complement the survey findings, I also analyze the user's comments, which offer a more nuanced view of how Korean Chinese experience and cope with alienation in their daily lives. Let's take a closer look at these insights. Evidence to alienation was offered by various accounts of participants' life experiences and anecdotes. I grouped the findings into three reactions to the existing boundaries. First, since around 62% respondents choose C as the most frequently asked question, which is you must be able to watch Korean drama without subtitles, right? And this question reflects that being able to speak heritage language is taken for granted as a fundamental aspect of being Korean Chinese. Moreover, this assumption not only reflects the widespread influence of Korean popular culture, but also presumes that Korean Chinese are naturally interested in Korean culture. On the one hand, for Korean Chinese who can speak their ethnic language, their bilingual ability receives more recognition amidst the backdrop of Korean wave. On the other hand, due to Korean dramas often depicting Korean Chinese as criminals and illegal immigrants, they have to deal with the effects of stigmatization. They are sometimes asked in real life whether all Korean Chinese are criminals like showed in the Korean films. The language, culture, and lifestyle of Korean Chinese are frequently compared to the contents showcased in Korean popular culture. Examples of such experiences are shared in the comment area, such as are all Chaosen Jew swindlers? Do you eat kimchi every day like in K-dramas? Do you sleep on the floor like Korean people do in the dramas? I'm envious of your bilingual ability. Or what is the difference between you and North and South Koreans? And these questions primarily target the cultural distinction of Korean Chinese. When faced with questions about cultural distinction, participants respond in the ways that either contract the boundary by emphasizing their differences from Koreans in the peninsula or blur conventional ethnic classification by highlighting shared cultural traits. Interestingly, even within Chinese society, when encountering a Korean Chinese individual, curiosity and questions are often shaped more by projection from Korean popular culture rather than by their status as an ethnic minority of China. Faced with such inquiries, some argue that Korean Chinese culture is different from Korean culture in the peninsula as they have preserved traditional and authentic culture more effectively. Or they choose to blur conventional ethnic classification and substitute ethnic question with common sense, such as we are Chinese-born Korean just like American-born Chinese. The differences between Korean language that's spoken by South Koreans and Korean Chinese are similar to the differences between Beijing accent and Taiwan accent, or the differences between British English and American English. I think membership becomes highly subjective and contingent in this case. In everyday life, beyond questions about cultural distinction, many inquiries also revolve around nationality. For example, in the online survey, 21% participants choose A, indicating that Korean Chinese are often mistaken for North Koreans in China. Meanwhile, 8% choose B. Participants were frequently asked the question, if there is a football match between China and South Korea, which team will you support? In many cases, Han Chinese are almost synonymous with Chinese nation. As a result, ethnic minority frequently found themselves having to explain and assert their nationality in everyday interactions with ethnic others. As an ethnic group with border-crossing history and geographically borders their ancestral homeland in the Korean peninsula, Korean Chinese are often perceived as foreigners or asked to clarify their relationship with the ancestral homeland. The ethnonym of Korean Chinese in Chinese language, Chaoxianzu, has only one word difference with the Chinese translation of North Korean, Chaoxianren. Therefore, many Korean Chinese are mistaken for North Korean, or they are directly labeled as North Korean defectors in China and asked about their difficult life experiences, indicating somehow a lower social class. However, when it comes to their relation with South Korea, they are often asked to take their stand in between China and South Korea to prove their patriotism or loyalty to China. Additionally, many participants mention the same experience of having problems in using their Chinese identity card in China when checking into hotels. Ethnic identity is an official category appears on all identity cards. The identity cards of some ethnic minorities include both Chinese and ethnic languages. Living in a society overwhelmingly dominated by Han Chinese language and culture, their ethnic language on the ID card is considered as very much foreign, even though it explicitly states that they are Chinese citizens. Interrogations on national identity revolves the predicament of the ethno-national belonging of Korean Chinese. In numerous quotidian details, they frequently need to prove that they are not foreigners, but rather Chinese. And their primary response is to adhere to the overarching concept of Chinese nation to affirm their status as a minority of the country. In this context, a 13 national belonging between foreign and family as a response to nationality-related inquiries carries a strong sense of political alliance. In addition to questions regarding cultural distinction and nationality, some inquiries stem from social class. Around 6% said they had experience of being asked to question if they were awarded bonus points in the college entrance examination. This type of question arises because ethnic minorities were often placed on the lower echelons of the social economic ladders in the inter-ethnic communication. Preferential policies for ethnic minorities are often perceived as a top-down conferred privilege, which reinforces the perception of ethnic minority as less developed. They got condescending questions and comments, such as, do you live gregariously or dispersedly? Or they are assumed to have very poor proficiency in Chinese language. And faced with the stereotypical images, Korean Chinese participants are found to change their position in the ethnic hierarchy by emphasizing how much they have been sinicized, which makes them no different from Han Chinese. At the same time, they try to distinguish themselves from ethnic others by signalizing their higher education level, better income, higher level of consumption, and even high standard of food and personal hygiene. In the face of various criticism regarding the perceived backwardness of ethnic minorities, Korean Chinese exhibit strong ethnic pride. Paradoxically, one of the ways they emphasize their development of the community is by highlighting how similar they are to Han Chinese. This, however, inevitably creates a tension during boundary making, as it also oscillates between the pressures of Sinicization and the desire to maintain their ethnic distinction. The responses of Korean Chinese to interrogations regarding culture distinction, nationality, and social class are by no means limited to only three strategies mentioned in this presentation. However, these alienation experiences and their responses have enriched our understanding of the daily life situation faced by ethnic minorities. And this brings me to the concluding remarks of my presentation. The findings shared in this presentation demonstrate the wide gulf between the increasing interest in publicizing multi-ethnic society and the limited understanding of ethnic minorities in China. Ethnic minorities, in turn, often find themselves caught in the tension between preserving their cultural distinctions and contributing to national solidarity. Culture distinctions, nationality, and social class are used to characterize Korean Chinese, not in a form of binary othering, but rather exist as intersectional and hierarchical. The Korean Chinese participants are found to manage ethnic boundaries using approaches such as reinterpreting ethnic membership, adhering to the overarching concept of Chinese nation to verify their ethnic minority status, and changing their position in the ethnic hierarchy. However, it is important to note that while the survey uses multiple choice and open-ended questions to allow Korean Chinese participants to share their experiences of alienation, in reality, such experiences are often shaped by a mix of different factors. Interrogations related to cultural distinction, nationality, and social class can occur simultaneously to varying degrees. Moreover, the ways in which individuals choose to respond may not always be directly tied to their ethnic identity. At the opening ceremony of 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games, a woman wearing traditional Korean dress sparked a debate about cultural appropriation. The woman was a member of Korean Chinese who took part in the opening ceremony among more than 50 other representatives of ethnic groups in China. In a parallel scenario at the beginning of last year, a Chinese actress wearing traditional Korean attire while promoting tourism for her hometown Yanbian, the Korean Autonomous Prefecture in China, rekindles controversy among Chinese and Korean netizens. The Chinese model of multiculturalism has developed within indigenous multi-ethnic context, shaped by geographical boundaries of the Chinese nation-state. And the case of Korean Chinese goes beyond methodological nationalism, as the experiences are deeply entangled in the ongoing disputes over culture, food, territory sovereignty between China and the Korean Peninsula. Over the years, Korean Chinese are often found themselves at the center of contention in these debates. In daily life, as Chinese citizens with Korean roots, they constantly face questions about their identity, promoting them to reflect on their place and sense of belonging in the corresponding society. And this study highlights the everyday alienation experienced by Korean Chinese in China, emphasizes their agency in navigating interethnic encounters. Ultimately, the Korean Chinese case strives to offer a richer understanding of ethnic minorities and their experience in China. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for your time and attention. I welcome questions and discussions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Raisin. That was a very insightful and compelling lecture. We will now move on to the comment from our discussant. Uh, 김도혜 교수님 from Toksong Women's University.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me as a discussant. And well, yeah, okay. So the Ms. Wei's in presentation was really, really interesting and very insightful. In that, as Ms. Wei already know, the studies about the Korean Chinese Joseonjok in the Korean context was mostly focused on the Korean Chinese living in South Korea, not in China that much. And as she already mentions, the Korean media usually depicted those Joseonjo Korean Chinese as potential criminal. So the most of studies about Korean Chinese in South Korea focuses on their dismal experiences and bitter life experiences in South Korea. So comparing to the existing literature about them in South Korea, her research highlighted how the Korean Chinese identities are sort of moving target, and how they are actively making or sometimes unmaking the boundaries inside the China. So so I will give some of the questions for her to, well, hopefully to help her to improve or revise her articles more. So the first question is about I wonder what are the differences between contraction and positional move, specifically ethnic minorities' distinction themselves from ethnic others. Because she said that you said that contraction is also sort of distinction strategy, in that Korean Chinese tries to differ themselves from Koreans in Korea. So if you think these are the two different strategy, so if you think that they are different strategy in that the positional move attempts to shift hierarchy, Korean Chinese comment like Korean Chinese is different from Koreans in the peninsula does not have any connotation of shifting hierarchy. So for me, I think like that. So then why do you think Korean Chinese try to differentiate themselves from Korean in the peninsula in that context? And my second question is also related to the first, because first and second question, both questions are gearing toward the bigger question of mine, which is that why do you think the Korean Chinese are actively doing this boundary making? For what? I mean, to achieve what? So under that bigger questions, my second question is about your analysis on blurring strategy. So you mentioned that the comment of Korean Chinese, such as the differences between Korean language that spoken by South Koreans and Korean Chinese are similar to the differences between Beijing accent and Taiwan accent as a strategy of blurring. According to this analysis, we can say that Korean Chinese tries to blur the boundary between South Koreans and Korean Chinese. But with this strategy, what do you think of this Korean Chinese tries to achieve with this boundary making? The boundary making strategies that Wimmer suggested was the strategies that ethnic minority to achieve sort of better positions or to avoid discriminative situations or alienations in their living country. So in this sense, by blurring the boundary between Korean and Korean Chinese, what did Korean Chinese want to achieve? My last, no, not last question. The third question is, I wonder if you think that Korean Chinese such diverse strategies are successful or not. I guess this question is not for is not something that you can you need to answer for this specific articles, but maybe from your bigger dissertation topic. So I just wonder, what do you think of their strategy, if their strategy is like if their boundary making is successful or not in Chinese context. And my last and very, very small question is that in the presentation you mentioned that the Korean Chinese is very like unique cases because they are not stereotypical ethnic minority in China, and also they have very multiple. I mean, they have very they have geographical mobility because they can live anywhere in, not anywhere, but they can go Korea, China, and even beyond. So what do you think, how these specific characteristics of geographical mobility of Korean Chinese affect their boundary making or unmaking practices? And I mean, I just want to hear more about how these characteristics are related to their boundary making practices. So again, thank you so much for your presentation. And I learned a lot today from your presentations. And good luck for your dissertation.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, for the interesting, insightful questions. I'm not sure if I could have all those questions answered with satisfaction because that's very much, it's really interesting. Should I answer the question now, like maybe one by one, or are we going to collect all the questions? I guess I would just respond all the questions first. Okay,
Oh,
yeah. So the first one, the difference between contraction, the boundary, and positional move. I mean, theoretically, the framework I'm using, saying that contraction belongs to more like shifting the boundaries, which means try to exclude or contract the people who can be included. And for the one positional move, it's actually kind of modifying or changing the meaning or the membership of the boundaries. So I would say by contraction, they don't really change much about the meaning of the boundary that already exists. They just make use of them, so, which means, let's see, they give ethnic membership another meaning, which means those participants may have their own definition of how to be in Korean as a Korean Chinese, that what they think is different of the Koreanness defined in the peninsular. So they actually use their standard to define, to make a difference from the Koreans in the peninsular. And by modifying or changing the meaning to make a positional move, it's actually more like there already exists a hierarchical order, ethnic hierarchy in China. And as a non-typical ethnic minority, they're supposed to be on a relatively lower echelon of this order. But somehow they try to make meaning of their position and trying to move up to somewhere, another position of the hierarchy. So I think the difference, according to the theory, the original meaning would be, one is shifting the boundary. The other one is just changing the meaning or have their own interpretation of the meaning of the boundary. I would say that's the difference. And to go into details, the second question, why do they want to make a difference from the Koreans in the Korean Peninsula? I think it's a really big question. It's all about how do they find their identity, right? I'm not sure like everyone is trying to make a differentiation between Koreans in China and Koreans in North and South Korea. We're only talking about those who take participation in the survey. That I think it's very contingent, depending on the situation, that how much it matters for them to make the difference. Because occasionally they need to make connection, because once they encounter those who are very much admire or think positively of how they could speak two languages, they actually being the one who are quite talented and like in terms of language and culture. So in that case, culturally, those different Korean communities are all connected based on somehow a common culture base. But I think it will, to make it very general, I think depending on the situation, like what kind of situation they were faced with, and whether as that matters in that situation for them to make a difference. And to the third question, why do they make, why do their boundary making? First of all, I think for a lot of them being a minority, since there's only no more than 9% of ethnic minorities in China, it's very often for them to get questions just about their minority identity, because the majority question may coming from Han Chinese. And then it's very easy for them to get questions to explain what kind of ethnic minority you are. I think the moment when they get the question, and to answer the question who they are, they're already making the boundary and trying to make sense like how different they are. And it's very in the quotidian details, like in the quotidian fabric of Chinese society in the first place. And then on the other hand, I think it goes further. The reason why they need to making the boundary or unmaking the boundary is that there are already a very stereotypical images for all the ethnic minorities. So when someone raised the question to ethnic minorities saying that how you prove you're ethnic minority, or how you look different compared what I thought to be ethnic minority, they constantly have to prove or explain themselves. I think it's very much the normal, like everyday life. So I wouldn't see boundary making as something that only happened in very significant time. I would say it happens all the time, even consciously, unconsciously. So the reason why is the, how they identify themselves in everyday life without even anything significant happened, is like daily life experience. And the fourth question about blurring the conventional classification, especially using the case, for example, Beijing accent and Taiwan accent, or British English and American English. I think in the first responses for those who use this case is it's easier and convenient for those who do not understand, who are ethnic minority, to understand. It's a very basic logic for those who gave the first response like this, because compare how much ethnic minority knows about Han Chinese. Han Chinese and their education actually have very limited knowledge about ethnic minority when it comes to specific ethnic minority. So that's the easiest and the fast way for them to understand and to substitute this ethnic question into the common sense in the first place. And I would say if it go further, the reason they kind of blur the conventional classification and try to explain it with like some easier understand answer is the reason they want to avoid unnecessary conflicts. They just want to get over it without further explaining them, because since I just mentioned how it happens every day, I think a lot of them actually do not want to explain too much or emphasizing too much that they are ethnic minorities. So that's the easy way for them to escape those a little bit awkward situation, to let people understand them. And the question about the last one about whether there are, a unique case. Honestly, I'm not sure if there are the unique case, but since I'm studying on Korean Chinese, I'm trying to find the significance of the Korean Chinese community. So I would say I wouldn't say they're unique, but somehow on a certain level, there are some attributions, there are some characteristics that worth putting a lot more attention. For example, actually among the 55 ethnic minorities, they are not the only one with cross-border background. So there's over 30 ethnic minorities have those background of migration history, which means some of them actually have ancestral homeland outside China. Korean Chinese case is not the only case, but as far as I know, I would understand them as a special case that have very close connection, socially, economically, geographically, connection with the ancestral homeland. And that makes them different. So they get this transnational influences in terms of different dimensions that making them special. And this geographical mobility, how the higher geographical mobility contributes to their ethnic boundary making and unmaking. I would only, I mean, of course, there's a lot of them. And as we could mention, we could say from the presentation, because of Korean popular culture and how much they actually can, because like geographically it's very close for them to go to Korea and like have cultural exchange, financial exchange. So making them easier to extend their network, go beyond the national borders. And a lot of them actually think that this geographical mobility, making them not only as more ethnic minority, they go beyond, as you just mentioned, they go beyond China and South Korea. Some of the younger generation do believe that they have a cosmopolitan identity that even go further, not only like transnational, they actually can go further, go beyond the border between, like beyond Korea and South Korea. So I think this geographical mobility, of course, gives them a lot more agency and negotiation power to prove that they're not that limited, which goes back to the points that they're not that typical compared what people thought to be an ethnic minority in China. And I hope that answers all your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the discussion, Kim Tae, Kyosunim, and Miss Raisin. We'd like now to open the floor to Q&A for some questions. Feel free to leave your questions on the comments section, whether you're using YouTube or Facebook to watch this video. Okay. Is there a figure for Korean Chinese emigration to other countries aside from South Korea?
Sorry, let me check. Yes. Introduction. I would just quickly. Can I maybe let me check if I could share the screen. My internet's a bit slow. Can you maybe see the screen? So, well, this is a little bit old data, but anyhow, so there are
Miss
some
Raisin,
other
we're
Korean
still
Chinese.
seeing the PowerPoint.
Sorry, can you see the? Oh, Steve. Okay, sorry, I have Can you see now? I'm sure. Anyhow, we'll just read it. There are some other Korean Chinese outside South Korea. According to the data I collected, there are 53,000 Korean Chinese in Japan and over 30,000 Korean Chinese in the States, and around 3,000 to 5,000 Korean Chinese in Russia, and some other countries goes beyond, but those are the three countries have the highest number of Korean Chinese, living immigration to other countries aside from South Korea. And because due to some of them actually goes with different data, visa status. So I'm not sure everyone's accounted because, there's some other status cannot be counted officially in the number, but Japan and the States and Russia would be, I believe, the top three, the other countries aside from South Korea.
Okay. Sir Sydney also continues to ask, is there established or official Koreatown in mainland China?
I understand the question, but actually officially, I don't think officially they call it Koreatown. They would prefer call it Korean Chinese town, because the Korean town would be the Korean town established by South Korean migrants in China. But Korean Chinese are officially recognized as minorities. So it's actually a Chaoxianzu, Korean Chinese ethnic prefecture. So it's located in the northeast China. The prefecture is located in northeast China, borders Russia and North Korea, and have this capital city called Yanji City. And some other, because the urbanization process, many of them actually moving out of this ethnic Korean prefecture to other cities, big cities, especially in metropolitan cities and East Coastal areas. But when we interview and talk to Korean Chinese in China, many of them actually coming from Northeast China, and a lot of them coming from Yanbian ethnic Korean autonomous prefecture. But Korean town, I wouldn't say it's a Korean town. I would just say it's an autonomous prefecture. But they are. That's the very typical one.
Okay. So we have more questions from Hanazu. She asks, are there any gender differences in ethnic boundary making among the Korean Chinese you studied?
The first one. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in the the methods of the survey, I wouldn't be able to track the gender patterns of the participants. But the platform itself is predominantly used by female users. So I guess there might be some gender patterns to go beneath the results of the online survey. But since the question is very general, of course, you would say that, the consumption, that people who consume Korean drama, a lot of them may be females. That means, that might be the reason they raise the question or getting the question. But I wouldn't say, according to my research, there's a gendered difference in ethnic boundary making, especially the question didn't mention too much about gender perspectives.
Okay. And then the second question is, are there any instances of transnational activities among the second and third generation of Korean Chinese?
That's a really interesting question. Yes, there are. Interestingly, there actually is more like third and fourth generation of Korean Chinese, because the second generation, let's start from the second generation then. So I would say a lot of the second generation already comes to their 50s or even 60s. So it's a relatively older generation, because when we record the migration history, the first generation came to Korea, came to settle down in Manchuria area of the nowadays China starting from the mid 19th century, and a lot of them actually migrated to China after the annexation of Japan annexed Korea Peninsula. So it's after 1910. So those are the first generation. When it comes to the second generation of those who are already currently in their 50s or 60s, so those are if transnational migration were working as labors in South Korea can count as transnational activities? I think yes, of course. Those are the instances. And for the younger generation, third and fourth generation, even fifth generation, as far as I know, well, since many of them, their parents working in Korea, a lot of them actually go back and forth since their childhood. So they would have a very typical case is a transnational family of Korean Chinese that they grow up in China with their grandparents and their parents working in South Korea. So many of them got experience of traveling back and forth since very young, from China to Korea and from Korea back to China. And a lot of them could later, after graduate from high school or university in China, they can choose to study or work in South Korea. So consistently, I think a lot of transnational activities still going on in between China and South Korea, and even go beyond, because the cultural exchange and economic exchange still there. So giving them a strong support as a network to do these transnational activities.
I see. Okay. We have another question from MJ. He asks, how might greater understanding of Korean Chinese identity inform broader discussions on multiculturalism and ethnic integration in China and beyond?
Wow, interesting question. That's a very big question. Okay, I would say in terms of the extent whether Korean Chinese identity case can make a difference of the multiculturalism or ethnic integration in China, I don't think they will make that huge difference. Because the population number, if we think about the 55 ethnic minority population only makes no more than 9% of the total population. And Korean Chinese only ranks as the 15th largest ethnic minority. So, but it's important to point out how they are different, because a lot of focus have been given to those ethnic minorities that we already know in China, like Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Hui community, Mongolian. And I think it's noteworthy to put a lot more attention to the other ethnic minorities, those who have been less studied. And if we're talking about multiculturalism and ethnic integration in China within the Chinese territory, the boundary, I think they make a great case to show that how much the boundaries are actually not that sharply divided. Because when we're talking about culture and how their mobility actually go beyond the national border, it shows another side of this multiculturalism. You can't really define this multiculturalism by framing them within the border of Chinese national border, if we're not mentioning their culture, how much they connected to the culture in Korea. So I think it makes sense to give transnational influence when we, studying this Korean Chinese case.
Okay. Another question that we received is from Dr. Kyungmin Bae. So, she said that the quantitative results showed interesting analysis, and you also conducted FGD. But she wonders if you will also look into the deeper narratives for the current study.
Well, the quantitative results that I collected all the comments in the comment section. It's actually more about reading through the comments. I didn't do much like go into details about the frequency of using the words. It's much more about writing, like analyzing what kind of wrote all the comments and trying to see what kind of different experiences they have, and to see and correlated them to the strategy that already showed on the online survey. So look into deeper narratives. Unfortunately, if I'm pretty sure if I go deeper to as in-depth interview with selected participants, I may be able to get them like details of their personal experience. But things in this study, I already collected like over 2,000 participants' answers from the online survey, and a lot of the comments from the comment areas already. I don't think it's that much necessary in this study to go deeper, but I'm sure if we can make it a bigger study and to have a lot more in-depth interview, like go in details to trace their experience, it would make the study more interesting and making sense. But I think, in the study, the sampling is fairly enough to just analyzing the strategy. But thank you for the question.
All right. So we're still open for questions. Please feel free to continue typing them in the chat, whether you're using Facebook or in YouTube. Actually, Miss Ruixin, I have some things to say about, because me, I'm a Filipino Chinese here in the Philippines, and I'm actually thinking that we don't have to do this boundary setting every day. Our situation is that we've accepted ourselves as actually Filipino, at least a majority of us, but there are also still who believe that they're Chinese and they're Filipino. So they tend to have deeper roots that remain in China. So they tend to go back to China. But for other Filipino Chinese like me, we fully identify ourselves as Filipino. So our negotiations for that identity is definitive. So I'm just thinking like how it must be very difficult for Korean Chinese to continuously ask themselves where they fit in, whether they fit in either in Korea or whether they fit in China.
Right, thank you for sharing. I think that goes back to how Andrew Vimas argued that ethnicity is not like that much important all the time, because it matters in some society and it doesn't at all in some other societies. So I think originally the reason I used the theory is that it tries to trace under what circumstances it matters. And in some other circumstances, it doesn't matter at all. So people blur the conventional classification and just to give some random answers, or just substitute the ethnic classification into very common sense answers, just to get rid of the question, move on to the other, like move on in your life. So I think it depending on the society, like corresponding society where I live as well, right? I'm not very
Mhm.
familiar with the Philippine society, but I'm sure that um, when it comes to, I guess, I'm not sure. You may share your experience when you go back to, like when you, I wouldn't say go back, when you go visit China, that you may get questions that when people knowing that you're a Chinese Philippines, like people will ask how you feel. Those are the questions you may not get in the Philippines. I think depending on the society as well. I'm not sure if you ever been asked that question.
Yeah, yes, actually, come to think of it, I have been asked by when I go to China or even any place in the world, and then I meet Chinese from the mainland. They do ask me, how is it being Filipino Chinese, or what was your ancestral roots, or where was your family from? Yes, they do ask me those.
Right,
So
right.
yeah. Okay, so okay, we have an upcoming event promotion also. Um, let's start. So this we'd like to welcome everyone to join the Pilak Tanghal Nihon Buyo. Okay, this which is showcases traditional Japanese arts performance by Japan's Henju Puyodan. So this will be on March 24th, Friday. I'm sorry, March 14th, Friday. That's today at 6 p.m. So after this conference, you may head down to the UP Statistics Auditorium at UP Diliman. So registration and refreshments start at 5:30 p.m. and the program begins at exactly 6 o'clock p.m. So from the UPKRC, we have another event um, in part as part of the VSD Brown Bag session. From expat to influencer, how Korean migrants are shaping the Hallyu phenomenon in the Philippines. The speaker will be Miss Rose Carmel Lacuata from the Department of History, College of Liberal Arts from De La Salle University. It will be on April 7, Monday, 10 o'clock a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at room 309 Cesar E.A. Verata School of Business in UP Diliman. The event is on-site and also open to the public. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for attending our special online lecture. We hope that you learned something new today, something insightful. Thank you for attending us. Thank you for attending our lecture. We hope to see you in our succeeding lectures.